name is Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. I watched Sanders' reply, or I read Sanders' reply on the airstrikes by the Trump administration against Syria. This is where he loses me. This is where he loses me completely. Because if you can't stand for something and say, yeah, this was beyond the pale. He essentially attacked the country, didn't even figure out whether or not. Put it this way, Donald Trump attacked them before he even realized what took place. He didn't let the process work his way out. He didn't look at the process of saying, hey, we need to verify that these guys actually did it. We need to verify that the Syrian government did it. The Syrian government has no reason to do this. They don't. That doesn't mean they didn't do it. That's not my point. My point is, if you're going to do an airstrike that's going to potentially put this country in the line of sight of another nuclear power nation, shouldn't you be a little bit less cavalier about doing it? And shouldn't you probably go through proper channels just to avoid creating a situation that escalates this into a nuclear war? Now, if you're calling yourself a socialist, wouldn't you be a little bit stronger on that point of, whoa, we shouldn't necessarily just be attacking these countries like this, particularly when it's against international law and it is against our own law. Trump has no authorization to be in Syria at all. Zero. Regardless of how he feels about it, he has no authorization. The babies that he's so hurt, Trump has killed hundreds of people. A lot of those were babies that he's murdered. So spare me this thing of, oh, Trump was so hurt by the babies that died. Trump has been murdering babies. That's the truth of the situation. Let's look at Bernie Sanders' statement. This statement is just sad and pathetic. In a world of vicious dictators, Syria's Bashar al-Assad tops the list as a dictator who has killed hundreds of thousands of his own citizens to protect his power and wealth. His regime's use of chemical weapons against the men, women, and children of his country, in violation of all international conventions and moral standards, makes him a war criminal. All right? Tell me, Sanders, what authorization does Donald Trump have on making this strike? What authorization? What is he using as legal justification to use the military in this country to attack another sovereign nation? What is he using it? If he's not using any kind of congressional authorization, isn't that by definition illegal? Yes, it is. If it's by definition illegal, by definition illegal. And if these strikes that he's been doing all over these places, Mosul, the one in Yemen that murdered 30 people, are those not indicative of a war crime? If he is functioning illegally and he is murdering people in the functioning, in that illegal functioning, that's literally a war crime. Did the previous president, killing thousands of civilians, again, functioning in an illegal capacity in all of these nations, is that not a war crime? What about George Bush? He killed 1 million Iraqis. Is that not a war crime? Mind you, he hit the gold star. He also added torture to that mix. Torturing people, trying to get them to create a link that didn't exist between 9/11 and Saddam Hussein. Explain to me, Sanders. Explain to me. His regime use of chemical weapons against men, women, and children of this country in violation of all international conventions and moral standards. Are you telling me that Trump and these drone wars, Obama and those drone wars, Bush and that war, were perfectly okay, were perfectly abiding by international conventions? Are you telling me that the United States unilaterally attacking another nation is not in violation of all international conventions and moral standards? Let's keep going. As the most powerful nation on earth, the United States must work with the international community to bring peace and stability to Syria, where over 400,000 people have been killed and 6 million displaced. The horror of Syria's civil war is almost unimaginable. We killed 1 million Iraqis. That bests his record of 400,000 in spades. He doubles it. George Bush, our president, doubles the number of people that you're saying that Assad murdered. Are you trying to say that the people that Assad has murdered, that civil war, justifies a U.S. president making a determination to strike a nation without congressional authorization, without any kind of international agreement, to unilaterally take that action? He murdered people in that action. Now, I'm not making this case to stand up for Syria. Clearly, Assad is a fucking horrible guy. The point I'm making is there's a certain level of context. And if Bernie Sanders is going to make this case that the guy is a war criminal, all right, shouldn't we be held by the same standards? Shouldn't Bush be locked up? Shouldn't Obama be locked up? And just now, Trump has been murdering babies. Shouldn't Trump also be locked up? All these guys are functioning legally. All of these guys are committing acts of war without any level of congressional authorization. Under Sanders' model, all of these guys are functioning illegally as war criminals. If there is anything we should have learned from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, in which the lives of thousands of brave American men and women and hundreds of thousands of Iraqi and Afghan civilians have been lost and trillions of dollars spent, it is easier to get into a war than to get out of one. I am deeply concerned that these strikes could lead to the United States once again being dragged back into a quagmire of long-term military engagement in the Middle East. It goes beyond that. It goes beyond that. This is not Iraq. Syria is being bolstered by Russia. Russia has some kind of alliance with China. Any kind of assault that involves Russia involves, for the most part, Syria, and it involves Iran, and more likely than not will involve China. This is not us getting dragged into a war. This is bombs landing on United States soil. Be honest. Be honest. You've been greatly duplicitous in these first 2 or 3 paragraphs, making this case instead of having a moral standing of saying, well, no, we have no justification. We have no moral authority to make these strikes. We have no legal authority to make these strikes. We have no plan strategically that justifies these strikes. If the last 15 years have shown anything, it's such engagements are disastrous for American security, for the American economy, and for the American people. The Trump administration must explain to the American people exactly what this military escalation in Syria is intended to achieve and how it fits in the broader goals of a political solution, which is the only way Syria's devastating civil war ends. Congress has a responsibility to weigh in on these issues. As the Constitution requires, the President must come to Congress to authorize any further use of force against the Assad regime. Implicit in that statement is that the first use of force was perfectly okay. This is Bernie Sanders. This is not Dick Cheney. This is not Nancy Pelosi. This is not Chuck Schumer. This is Bernie Sanders. Has a responsibility to weigh in on issues. As Constitution requires, the President must come to Congress to authorize any further use of action against the Assad regime. You know what else the Constitution requires, Sanders? That the threat has to be directly to our country. Or Donald Trump needs to get congressional authority to make strikes as opposed to just willy-nilly attacking whoever he wants. You and your other members have completely abdicated your responsibility for the things that this president is doing, and he is not even in your own party. You have Democrats out here chest thumping that this is some awesome idea. He had to literally contact Russia because he was aware that the strikes could escalate a conflict between the Russian government and this country, a nuclear war. Russia has already warned the United States back in October that if they hit any of his interests, meaning if they kill any Russians, if they hit any of Bashar's, if they try to take down Bashar, it's a war. It's a war. Sanders is giving us a blank check, regardless of whatever these words are. If he's not coming out saying, I am against this action. He should not have taken this action. There is no constitutional justification for this action at all. Then he's functioning literally in coordination with Trump and the other warhawk neocon Democrats who thinks this is an awesome course of action to take. Further, the United States must work with all parties to reinforce long-standing international norms against the use of chemical weapons. What about international norms against the use of invading countries and murdering their civilian populations without any congressional justification? What about that, Sanders? How about that? Yeah, chemical weapons are bad. Do you really believe that somehow a chemical weapon is somehow better than a bomb or worse than a bomb? They're just as dead. They're just as dead. You guys are getting your panties in a bunch on chemical weapons. Donald Trump has been out here murdering civilians by the hundreds, killing his beautiful babies. Are you really making this long-winded case that whatever Trump just did was perfectly okay? That you're not going to take a stand against it and you're not going to come out against it and you're going to follow that shell of a line that the Democratic Party is playing that A, Russia hacked us, B, this particular strike was okay because what Bashar al-Assad did in regards to the chemical weapons was ghastly. C, they didn't even take the time to figure out who dropped the chemical weapons. A, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. This is a petulant child striking out at another country without any strategy whatsoever. Now here's the catch. It is very possible that the reason why Donald Trump did this is because the Democrats have been red baiting so bad and he was looking for a way to amp up his bona fides. Look at what I did. I challenged Russia. They're standing by Bashar al-Assad and I stuck my thumb in their eye. Look how big and tough guy I am. I literally sent a missile over there. Yes, I did warn Russia to get their people out the way because if anything happened, I knew it would be my ass. So I did warn them. But I didn't mind striking their interests. Would somebody be that craven politically to do something like that and risk a nuclear war? Yes, he's a politician. Politicians will do that, particularly if he believes he can get away with it. That's the reality of the situation. I don't know why Trump is making this strike. It's very possible that Trump felt some kind of way about seeing all those kids murdered. Mind you, the problem I have with that is that he's been murdering babies himself. He's been murdering innocent civilians, left and right, for the entire time he's been in that office. Going so far as to try to get those drone murders under the CIA so the public wouldn't be allowed to see him committing those murders. Put this shit in context. The idea that Sanders is going to come out, he's not going to bash him. He's not going to have a go at him. He's not going to make the point that the president is functioning in an illegal capacity. He's not going to make the point that the president is functioning in an illegal capacity on international law as well. He comes out here and shucks and jives for the neocons in both parties. That's gross. That's gross. If we end up in a war, remember what Sanders came out and did. This is not indicative of somebody with character. I'm sorry, it's not. It is not indicative of somebody who's functioning at a basic level of integrity. They did not even take the time to make sure that the strikes, or at the very least that the chemical weapons, came from Bashar al-Assad. How long would it have taken to make the determination on where did these weapons come from before doing a strike? And then look, I still make the point. It doesn't matter if Bashar al-Assad did it. This is a pointless strike. And it decreases the chances of escalation between the United States and Russia. Russia already came out saying any relationship that they've had with the United States has been ruined by the actions of Donald Trump. We're in another Cold War. That's what that boils down to. We're in potentially a nuclear situation because of the actions of Trump. Sanders surely has to know this. He has to know this. He can't be that in the dark. He's not coming out forceful about it. He's not coming out strong about it. He's not standing with integrity about it. He's towing the line of the Democratic Party. And he gives some weak milk toast. Well, Donald Trump is going to have to come to Congress if he wants to do another strike. This is gross. This is gross. He's functioning as a sheep herder. That's what it boils down to. And not just functioning as a sheep herder. He's functioning to give cover to illegal behavior by this administration. In the same way that all these neocon Democrats are giving cover to the behavior of this president. The guy that we've been told is the goddamn apocalypse. The guy that we've been told up to this point is going to eat your babies. But it's perfectly okay that he's willy-nilly doing strikes against the law, against international law, without any evidence whatsoever, or at the very least smoking gun evidence, to nail down that these weapons actually did come from the place that everybody's saying they came from. This is gross. And this could lead to war. And the last thing Sanders should be doing is being complicit in that lead up to war. This is Iraq. He's functioning as cooling power. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, feel free to like and share. Look, this bothers me. You know, fundamentally I like Sanders. But what I like about him has nothing to do with this. This is literally a situation where our country is being primed for a war. The last war that a Republican took us into murdered 1 million people and spent $6 trillion to do it. Put that shit in context, because the context is damn important. His response to this was to give it a blank check and to make it look as if what Trump did was perfectly okay. I don't care if he doesn't feel like, he's scared of being tarred as somebody who's supporting Bashar al-Assad. I don't care. I don't care at all. There's something to be said with functioning of a level of integrity, particularly when your government is making a determination that may lead us into the destruction of this country via nuclear war. I don't care about your health care. I don't care about your college loans. I care whether or not we end up in some kind of nuclear conflict for some dumbass political tactics that these guys are playing around with. The last thing Sanders should be doing is functioning in this way and giving these guys any level of credibility in the things that they're doing. They have zero. They're functioning illegally. Sanders has to know that they're functioning illegally, and yet he's still not coming out against it. That's just sad. If you guys enjoy the content, feel free to like, share. You can support the work on Patreon. Thanks, guys.